Hello, gorgeous seekers, and welcome to Moon Magic. And we are going to get into a really powerful full moon in Scorpio on May 18th. The Scorpio full moon is always going to have this power and intensity to it. It's funny because I started this series when I started Moon Magic as a whole. I started it on the Scorpio new moon for the Scorpio new moon in the late part of 2017. And so whenever I get to one of the Scorpio moons, it's always kind of like this check-in point to where this journey, these moon magics have taken us. And I have a really deep connection to Scorpio. This is my grandmother's ring that I'm always wearing, and she was a Scorpio and is really important being in my life, has really helped shape the person that I am, and still I feel her energy with me. And Scorpios play a really important role in my life. They always have. There's kind of this thing with them. So I have a really deep personal connection to them. But beyond that, the symbolism of Scorpio's energy, the power of the Scorpion energy is really beautiful. And I think when we understand how to work with it and acknowledge it and love it and embrace it, it is one of the best parts of life, and it is one of the best parts of experiencing life. And so this full moon is really a chance to enjoy, I think, the inherent quality of Scorpio and to learn how to embrace this aspect of yourself. Because one thing that I really think is important when we talk about astrology and archetypes and our charts and who we think we are and our destinies and all of that stuff, it's great, right? It's really fun to pull apart who we are and who we're becoming. But at the end of the day, what we want to really be focusing on is how can we find beauty and poetry and connection with all of these archetypes, with all of these aspects of existence, from birth to death, from light to dark, these dualities and these middle grounds and these places where we weigh things out, where we feel more detached or more codependent. We need to find a way to incorporate them all. And if we can understand and embrace Scorpio's energy, it's seriously one of the things that will make your life so much richer, and you will feel so empowered by understanding and connecting with this energy. So this moon, it kind of gives you the chance to play with it. Now, a lot of you have Scorpio in your chart, or you connect with Scorpio energy already. So this might be a moon that you feel really the deep ooey gooey goodness of esoteric and occult energy, the unseen, the hidden. For those of you who are a little less comfortable with it, this is a great chance to have fun with it. So let's talk through it. And this is going to be an interesting multi-layered discussion. So we have this full moon happening in Scorpio on May 18th. It's going exact at 2:11 p.m. Pacific time, so over in California. You can figure out the rest from there, I'm sure. So this is going to be a moon that takes place at 27 degrees of Scorpio. We are now out of these 0 degree, 29 degree full moons, and we are now getting into moons that are a little bit more in the flow. So we're still having the essence of a full moon being a time of closure, of wrapping up, of harvesting, of seeing the process as a whole. A lot of times anything you've set as an intention in the new moon, so we just had a new moon in Taurus, you'll kind of be seeing the flowering of it in this little energetic cycle of the moon. So 27 degrees of Scorpio, which means the sun is at 27 degrees of Taurus, and they're having their nice opposition there. And the Taurus-Scorpio opposition, which we've talked about a lot, is the birth and creation and the mothering and the nurturing energy of Taurus, and the death and the transformation and the power energy of Scorpio. And, this is a quintessential building blocks of our existence, is these two beautiful energies. Now, here's the thing that's really interesting. The moon is exalted in Taurus. So every planet has a place of exaltation. It's not their home sign. It will be a sign that brings, helps their energy expand. And when you think about the moon is inherently this feminine, mothering, nurturing energy. So in Taurus, another nurturing, feminine energy, it really is happy. It's all about creation, creating and giving birth to beautiful things. And so Taurus and the moon have this beautiful conversation. So when the moon is in the opposing sign of Scorpio, that's when the moon is in its fall, and every planet has a place where it's at its weakest. And the moon, even though it's a water energy, the moon, in Scorpio, it's in its fall, so it's weaker. It's a little more sensitive. It's a little more unsure. And that's partially because the way that I see this is this is a meeting place. It's kind of the headwaters of two different ways of thinking about life. The moon wants to conserve and create and nurture life into being through all the undulations, through everything that happens. And Scorpio wants to find out what happens after the transformation. Scorpio wants to find out what happens when you destroy things a little bit in order to create space for something new. And so the two kind of have to figure out what that dialogue is. And I think we all have moments where each of those aspects of ourselves, the one that wants the new beginning, who wants to find out what happens if we open something up, and the one that wants to nurture and retain, come head to head. And you can make pros and cons lists at very specific points in your life where there is that kind of, do I conserve what I have, or do I go for what's next? And so that conversation always kind of happens with a full moon in Scorpio, just all on its own. And I think that sometimes that can make for a moon that's a little bit tender. Now, here's the thing. In the days leading up to this full moon, you may feel a little bit of anxiety or a little bit of extra sensitivity to the world around you, where it's easy to feel anxious or overwhelmed, and even to feel a little bit of a sense of longing or a sense of wishing you had a little bit more control over the elements around you, and finding that you get really overwhelmed by when things when you can't really put your finger on what the narrative arc is supposed to be for certain elements in your life, right? Because we're always looking for a narrative arc. Now, I want to talk about a couple of other placements that are in direct conversation with this moon, the sun and the moon, and how that's going to lead us directly into something that has to do with the new energetic era we're in, and how this moon is helping set us up to really engage with it a little bit more deeply. So we have Mercury doing a nice little opposition to the moon at 24 degrees of Taurus. It's not a super close degree opposition, but there's still a conversation going on there. So we have the planet of communication opposing the moon, sitting close to the sun, having us think about how we tell a narrative, how we tell our story, how we communicate what we want, right? Not only that, we have the ruling planet of Scorpio, Pluto, at 23 degrees of Capricorn. So Mercury and Pluto are trining in these earth signs, and they're having a good old time, talking about power, transformation, and narrative storytelling. And Pluto at 23 degrees of Capricorn is sextiling the moon. And Pluto, of course, is the ruler of Scorpio. So you can imagine that Pluto is getting involved in this moon and into this meeting place of what do you conserve and what do you make space for. Now, Pluto is also associated with our sense of power and having power and control over things, and the desire to kind of unearth and unmask things. There's an investigative intensity to Pluto, and he wants to get in there and dig into the bones. So a lot of times I've kind of coined this phrase, digging in the midnight garden. And when we're going through a time in our life where we're digging in the midnight garden, what we are doing is we are getting into that deep, dark soil, and then we are digging through there. A lot of times we will be feeling grief or fog or processing something that's no longer serving us, and just sitting with the feeling of it without really knowing what those bones and what that soil is going to create next. I don't think this moon actually is going to be a digging in the midnight garden type of moon. But here's what I will say about it. We need to embrace mystery a little bit more, because so we have Mercury and Pluto who want to have this control of the narrative, who want to have control via moving and getting in there and putting, our fingers in things, right? And the thing is, this has become such a natural part of us in this modern era that we are in right now, which is one where we have our phones all the time. So we have social media, we have DMs, we have likes, we have that whole idea of people, watching our stories, and we look to see who's watching our stories, and we have email, and we have texts, and we have ways to like check up on people that are maybe far away or who we wonder about, right? And we have all these abilities that keep people, in theory, in our lives at some level, right? And we have all of this access to a certain sense that maybe we do have control. Maybe we do have the ability to keep things close to us in a way that we can manifest the narrative that we think we should be having. But when you think about the majority of being human history, being humans, the majority of our history, if you connected with people or a project or a place, and then life called you forward to work in a different city or marry somebody else, which was often, would often happen, or, even move a town 10 miles over. And there were people or situations or projects that it was hard to let go of, and you didn't know if you would ever run into those people again. There was this sense of like, okay, but I have to accept that. I have to accept this sense that there isn't going to be control over that. I'm not going to be able to pick up my phone and just randomly DM them at any point down the road. I'll just give it 6 months and I'll just DM them. There was this sense of, okay, I just have to go into this mystery. I have to accept that. And that there isn't going to always be this nice, tidy, neat packaging of the narrative of what these people or this place meant or are supposed to mean down the line for me. There is an acceptance of what they mean to me right now, and there is an acceptance of what that situation has given me. And then there is this understanding that we just must go forward. And there was a lack of that more and more input. Now, we like to think that we have a lot of control over how people show up in our lives and how they love us because we have this access to constant communication. And there's always the potential that you can reach out to somebody who has haunted you or to a situation that maybe you should go back to or you think you should go back to, what have you. But often what actually is happening there is we are numbing down our intuitive and our soul-aligned sense of here and now. So while it seems like we are having more of an ability to figure out what that narrative arc is supposed to be and how we're supposed to put the pieces in play, because we can always go back and nudge it and check it and touch in with it, we're actually shutting down our ability to really see and feel. And I think symbolically this moon is having us look at that. And this is a really important part of the next energetic cycle that we have really arrived in it now. We are here and we are working with these new tool sets. The Uranus and Taurus era here, the next 7 or so years, is going to be about understanding what true transformation and revolution is, and because it's in this earthy energy, we are remembering our groundedness, that it's not always about this fast-paced control via looking at who's watched us, looking at who's texting us, right? Because it takes us away from something really beautiful. And people just knew how to live in this sense of mystery a lot more easily than we do now. And it does mean, even though we have the added advantages of being able to call somebody up who we lost contact with, and there are so many beautiful advantages to that, we have also gotten a little skewed with how we are connecting to this energy. So this full moon is going to be bringing that up, bringing up this idea that it's okay for there not to always be a tidy narrative arc the way that we think it's supposed to play out down here on this field of the physical worlds. A lot of things happen in the energetic world, and that is a great thing. So this moon is really calling you to pay attention more to that even though you may feel very tempted to try and get control via these other mechanisms. You might feel very called to use technology and use the tools at your disposal to tell the story you want to tell, to pull it all together, to get something out, to express some source of pain. And not, while that could be a positive thing, maybe that's something you need to do, this moon at a deeper level is asking you to allow that mystery, to show you something that's a little bit beyond the quickness of that mercurial technology that we use so consistently in the day-to-day, right? And honestly, if you're not looking toward getting all those clean-cut answers and you relax a little bit, you will feel a lot less anxious and a lot less of that longing and that desire for power that can come up with the fact that the Sun, Moon, Pluto, and Mercury are all having conversations. I'm going to pull 4 cards. So we have the Queen of Cups. There's our intuitive queen, right? The Queen of Cups is going to be focused on sitting still with her intuitive process, with what she's feeling is happening at a deep level, not what she is thinking is happening, not what she is manipulating into happening, just what she's feeling. There is a quiet stateliness about the Queen of Cups where she is focused on developing her emotional core. A Queen of Swords. That's really interesting because what was I just saying? There is a face-off between the psychic, energetic, emotional front and this desire to communicate, to use words, to use technology, to get our messages across, to set our boundaries, to let people know just exactly where they are in our lives, to let ourselves know just exactly where we are. Now, here's the thing. I mean, we need both of these, right? We can't, yes, we do need to let the mystery of life enfold us a little bit, and this moon is asking for that. But we also, have to set healthy boundaries. We also have to clear the record sometimes. And I do have to say this moon would be a great time. Write letters to all the people that you wonder about. Write letters to all the situations or fears or what have you that are kind of coming up and haunting you at this time. I'm not necessarily suggesting sending them or calling the person reading the letter word for word, but write it up. Have fun with it. Use your words to understand what it is about it that you want to create into a narrative. And I think what you will find is when you look at those letters, maybe a few days after this full moon, you will notice the things that you really still feel you need to express, that you do need to follow up with. And you'll notice the things that you just feel okay with now that you've written them out and you understand what it is that was coming up, that you can find some peace in the mystery, in the fact that it's not about getting a payoff or a payout, right? So it's a great time to use your intuitive to translate into words. Knight of Cups. Wow. Okay, this is really getting to be an interesting 4-card spread for our discussion today because we have, so the Queen of Cups and the Knight of Cups are both they're romantic, right? And the Two of Pentacles. And the Ace of Cups was actually like sliding off of my hand at the bottom of the deck. So, okay. Lots of Cups energy, makes sense. We have the moon in Scorpio, water, 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 intuition, diving deep, going into the unseen. That's everything that this moon is about. That's everything this moon wants to have us dive into. So not surprising. But here's the thing, right? There is this kind of waffling between things because on the one hand, there's all this beautiful hope and clarity of vision. Clarity of hope, clarity of connection, and I do think that you may be finding that there is an ability to connect more deeply with others. I'm talking a lot about like diving into the mystery and accepting that we don't always need the narrative arc to make sense, but that's the thing that's so funny about the energetic field is once we kind of accept that, once we get relaxed into that and we really love it and embrace it, we love how our story plays out, the answers come right to us. And that's kind of what these cards are saying, None of these characters, all 3 of these, they don't push too hard. They kind of hold their energy in their own space. They kind of just gently saunter forward. I mean, the Queen of Swords, I wouldn't necessarily say she's gentle, But she keeps things simple. She keeps things short. She keeps things to the point. These two, the Queen of Cups and the Knight of Cups, tend to go through life kind of sweetly and softly. You know, they want to take their time feeling through each of these things, but all three of these bring some kind of insight and answer, right? They bring something to the table. They bring something to the feast of life. They bring some kind of reconnection to the surface. So the more we relax into this, the nature of this moon, the more I think you will find that that type of energy comes to meet you. Now, here's what's interesting. There is a choice to be made here, and there is some lack of clarity that rolls into clarity, right? So we have this Two of Pentacles. What is really, truly who you are, and what is not? Where are you choosing relationships or lifestyles, or even narrative arc outcomes, just so that you have something tidy, so that it feels like there's a wholeness to it, even though it's not really what makes you feel great? Where do you feel that you want to have control over something, or control over a situation, even though your soul doesn't really actually care about what that outcome is? And where do you feel that something really is honestly deeply yours and deeply connected to you? Where do you feel that when you open that door, even if it's a little muffled, even if you don't have all the answers yet, even if it's a little mysterious, even if you don't totally understand how to embody it all yet it feels very full, it feels very rich? Pay attention emotionally to what feels authentic to you, not what looks good on paper, not what would be a great book, not what would be you on a movie screen playing through your life where you get that final scene that feels really good. Don't let that be your motivator for this moon. Let your motivator be the sense of grace and peace and quiet in the now. If nobody was going to witness what you choose, no matter what would you choose that would genuinely make you happy? And it wouldn't matter what anybody thought of it. It wouldn't matter what that looked like to anybody else. What would it be? What would your 7-year-old self, who's playing out on the sidewalk or in the woods or wherever, or on the beach, wherever you played as a 7-year-old, what would that 7-year-old choose to do with their creative emotional juices? They probably aren't too concerned with what somebody approves of. They're probably a lot more interested in the joy of the creative process, and the joy of sharing with somebody they love, and the joy of the creativity. And there is just a mysteriousness. I mean, the thing with Scorpio is it's kind of relentless energy in the fact that it will always ask us to investigate just a little bit more. It will always ask us to dive a little bit deeper. It will always ask us to keep developing and keep becoming. I think Glennon Doyle said in her book Love Warrior, there is no becoming, there's just continuing. And I really love that phrase, because I think, becoming and to become is a great idea, right? But there's inherently in that idea, becoming is an endpoint. We've become it. We're here. It's done. Ta-da. And in reality, because we're energy frequencies, and that's what we're really working with, a frequency isn't ever just done. We're always going to continue to modulate and explore. And I think maybe that sounds like a despairing statement, or maybe it sounds really overwhelming to you, that idea of that everything's continuing all of the time. And there are times when that can be a really overwhelming thought. But I think if we embrace the fact that it's always continuing, that it's not about getting that narrative endpoint, that it's about continuing the ever deeper experience. There's the unimaginable horizon is always before us. And what an exciting thought. What an exciting thought that is what we get to have in this life and in this world. So finding peace with that, and finding it not just as it being we're doing the work, we're showing up to the work, life is the work. Continuing to grow and to develop and to be curious is not always about hard work either. It's also just about a lightness of curiosity. And Scorpio energy does not always have to be engaged with in that heavy way that I think it's notorious for being. There's a really deep and hilarious playfulness to Scorpio energy that is very has a really good sense of the scope of existence and understands why things are light, because nothing stays the same. So there's a lot of beauty to it. So once again, I think a lot of us will be just feeling through the power and the beauty of Scorpio energy. And whether you are familiar with it or you're still learning how to work with it and understand it and embrace it, this is a fantastic moon to get in there and have fun with it. Everybody's going to have something different that's coming up with them as far as that meeting point between what you want to conserve and what you want to destroy. And this moon will be bringing that up. And the more you're able to relax into it, the more I think it could lead to some really beautiful territory. I love you guys so very much. My magical mid-year reports are still on Vimeo, and they're so much fun, you guys. I've really enjoyed creating those. So if you need a guide to what the next few months are going to look like, we have Pluto retrograde, Saturn retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, and we have some bigger transits that are taking effect right now. Chiron and Uranus are both getting a foothold in their new transits. That's a really great resource. So I will leave the link for the Magical Mid-Year Intuitive Guide below. I would love to see you over there. I'd love to share that work with you. I'm also wearing PinkLune's gorgeous jewelry. As you know, this is my girl, and she always has amazing stuff. So go check out her Etsy shop. She's giving you that 15% off, so I will leave her link below and the promo codes. You can find me on my website and on Instagram at Sarah Verba. I will leave all of the info to get in touch with me, to find out about private readings, about working with me, about what's coming up in what I'm doing in the world. I also have Earth Lotus Art's gorgeous embroideries behind me, so I'll leave her Etsy shop link below as well if you're interested in that. These are my Taurus loves, and I'm so excited they're in my life. And I think that's everything for now, you guys. I will see you for the next Moon Magic, and obviously for all the monthly readings ahead. I love you guys so much. Have a blessed and beautiful full moon in Scorpio.